Hi, everybody, and welcome to Sneakered Life. I am Piper Harris, and today we are discussing imposter syndrome. This is our less than 10 talk. So this week I am digging into this subject, and I know it's a subject that a lot of us have heard about, have talked about, but I think it's really important because for all of us that are either pursuing a new goal, pursuing a new career, or simply trying to just get through life, this thing, this anomaly that happens, the imposter syndrome or the imposter phenomenon, can really take a hold of us, and it can be crippling. So on Monday, I gave a more specific talk about this. We're kind of breaking it down this week. So if you haven't seen Monday's video, please make sure that you head over to piperharris.net/watch, and you can find that video on there. So what's really interesting in diving into imposter syndrome and really researching this topic, what I'm finding is imposter syndrome really tends to go after women. Now, that's not to say that men don't struggle with this. That's not it at all. However, in everything that I am reading, I am finding that women are predominantly attacked by imposter syndrome. And so that led me into wondering, why is this? Why is this? So, it's interesting because today the women's equality movement is flourishing. And it's really interesting because Melinda Gates has dug into this in her topic, the moment of lift, and she's been talking about that. You probably have seen it on social media. And what's shocking to me that I learned from Melinda Gates is that we have 208 years until we reach gender equality, women. 208 years. Let that sink in. So that means that I'm not going to see that in my lifetime. And if I had daughters, but your daughters will not see that in their lifetime. So I was thinking about that. We have this rush, this movement for, gender equality. And I thought, when it comes to imposter syndrome, why is it harder on women, or why are women hit harder than men? And is it because of this disparity, because of the gap between women and men? I think in part, yes. So in the book, How Women Rise, they discuss this, how research has shown that girls, when they're raised, are rewarded for good behavior, being obedient, agreeable, helpful, and nice. Whereas boys are rewarded for ruggedness, bucking authority, and showing aggression. So while we're talking about, imposter syndrome this week, that feeling like a fraud and being found out or inadequate, could this be linked to the idea that we were taught that unless we're good, unless we're obedient and perfect, we're frauds if we don't reach that, or we're not good enough? What do you think? What do you think? I think there's definitely a correlation. Now, I'm not saying that's the whole thing, but I think there's a definite correlation. So let me ask you, how about you? I'm talking to the women, talking to you ladies. Do you struggle with imposter syndrome? And what do you think it's linked to? Do you think it's linked, and I posted a poll, hopefully it worked. Do you think that it's linked to how you were raised, being good, being obedient, doing all those things? Or do you think it's based on this gender inequality? Or do you think it's a combination of the two? I want to hear. So I do believe, I really truly do believe that it is linked in part to societal norms and that gap between genders. I also believe that is due to the indoctrination of these so-called normative behaviors that girls are supposed to have, that agreeableness, that goodness, and that those things, those ideas can be directly linked to perfectionism. So as women, when we can't reach perfection, many times that's when the imposter jumps in. It steps in and it starts whispering to us our lack of worth, and that we just have to work harder, go further. And it's all in the name of goodness and perfection. So take a piece of paper and let me ask you these questions on a scale of 1 to 10, okay? 1 being this doesn't sound like me, 10 being this, whoa, this is exactly me, okay? So number 1, do you feel like you have to have everything just right before you can take action? Between 1 and 10. Number 2, do you feel like you have to adhere to societal norms in order to fall in line with goodness? Think about that. You know, it's funny as I was thinking about this talk today about falling in line with those things. I will never forget a situation. I was a bit of a rebel. I was a bit of a black sheep. And I was raised in a Christian home, Protestant Christian home. And I'll never forget, we were in a very conservative church when I was growing up, and I broke all the rules and I went and got a tattoo with my boyfriend in high school. So as you can imagine, I really busted some societal norms. And I'll never forget, I was sitting in church, I crossed my leg and my ankle showed where I got that tattoo. And I felt such shame because it wasn't goodness and it wasn't the defined perfection. It had nothing to do with my religion. It had to do with I was a little girl that broke the societal rules. It had nothing to do with my faith. But I broke the rules that society set out before me. So let me ask you this. Number 3, on a scale of 1 to 10, 1, this isn't me, 10, that's absolutely me, okay? Do you feel like you're always less than other women in your life? So you're constantly comparing. Even if you don't mean to compare, do you compare? Does that make sense? And number 4, do you find yourself learning and doing more just to reach this kind of nebulous goal? And in fact, there's not really a goal. It's just, I have to do more. I have to do more. I have to do more. So listen, if you answered these questions with, 5 and up, it sounds like you're striving for perfection. And that is something that imposter syndrome actually hones in on. In fact, it is shown that women are very high achievers. So are men. Women are very high achievers, but we hold on to the idea of perfectionism. And when we can't achieve perfection, that's when imposter syndrome comes in and we feel like absolute imposters and frauds. And oh my gosh, what if somebody finds out? So how do we overcome this? You've got to create a continuum of achievement. No more thinking of perfection and failure. There's nothing for in between. So it's not based on anyone else and what they think and what they've defined for you. And it's not based on just failure and perfection. It's a continuum. And it helps you to grow and change, which as what you're showing, what you're going for, you want to grow and change, and there's nothing wrong with it. But looking at a continuum of like good, better, best allows you forward momentum without beating yourself up. Because here's the problem with imposter syndrome. If we listen to it too much, we become paralyzed. We fall into the trap of thinking, I must be perfect. I'm going to compare myself to her and compare myself to her. And we fall in line with things that were defined for us, not us defining them for ourselves. So when you hear that voice, when you hear that imposter telling you you're not good enough and you're a fraud and a fake, redefine what that voice is actually saying. Decipher if it's fact or fiction. If you're comparing yourself to another woman, ask yourself, what does she have? How can I do something similar? If it's based on her looks, I don't know what to tell you. You need to love yourself first. If she has great shoes, ask her where she got them. If she's got great arms, where do you work out? If you're constantly comparing yourself to another woman in your organization, what is it about her that just you think is amazing? Mimic her. Talk to her. Ask her, how do you do it? Decipher what you're listening to. Is this perfection idea that's just being blasted in your ears and the imposter is saying you'll never reach it, but you keep striving? Is there fact to what you're struggling with? Are you working on a continuum of achievement? Remember what I said on Monday, we've got to discern the voice between fact and fiction. And part of that is recognizing what we have been raised to believe. So I'd love to hear from you today. Do you believe it's in part gender inequality? Do you think in part it's how society has taught girls to be? Or do you think this is just what I've been given? What you think about this, how you think you can overcome the imposter syndrome. So this is today's Less Than 10 Talk. I am Piper Harris, and I want nothing more than to give you tips, tools, and tricks to add to your life, to create a life that drives, empowers, excites, and motivates you. And if you're in a place where you're absolutely stuck, let me know. I can coach you into confidence. I can coach you into recognizing that imposter's voice. We can work on this together, and you will achieve those goals and those dreams defined by you, living the life you are meant to walking in your own. So thanks so much, everybody, for joining me today. I hope to speak to you all very soon.